Thank you. Good morning. This is the Committee on Public Health and Human Services. I understand that state law currently requires that the following announcement be read at the beginning of every remote public hearing as follows. Due to the current public health emergency, City Council committees are currently meeting remotely. We are using Microsoft Teams to make these remote hearings possible. Instructions for how the public may view and offer public testimony at public hearings of council committees are included in the public hearing notices that are published in the Daily News, Inquirer, and Legal Intelligentsia prior to the hearings, and can also be found on phlcouncil.com. I now note that the hour has come, and clerk, will you please call the roll to take attendance? Members that are in attendance will please indicate that you are present when your name is called. Also, please say a few brief words when responding so that your image will be displayed on screen when you speak.
Councilmember Bobby Heenan.
Good morning, Madam Chair, and good morning, colleagues.
Good morning.
Councilmember David O.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, colleagues.
Good morning.
Councilmember Helen Gim.
Good morning, Council Chairwoman, and good morning, colleagues.
Morning.
Councilmember Derek Green.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, colleagues. Good seeing you this morning.
Good to see you.
Councilmember Isaiah Thomas.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, colleagues. Good to see everybody this morning.
Good morning.
Councilmember Kendra Brooks.
Good morning, Madam Chair. Good morning, colleagues.
Good morning.
And Councilwoman Cindy Bass.
I am present. Thank you. And a quorum of this committee is present, and this hearing is now called to order. Again, this is the public hearing of the Committee of Public Health and Human Services regarding Bill number 200392. Bill number 200425 is being held at the request of the sponsor and will not be heard today. Clerk, will you please read the title of the bill being considered today?
Bill number 200392, An Ordinance amending Section 10-403 of the Philadelphia Code entitled Prohibited Conduct by prohibiting the use of consumer fireworks and providing certain penalties under certain terms and conditions.
Thank you. Before we begin to hear testimony from the witnesses that we have for today, everyone who has been invited to the meeting to testify should be aware that this public hearing is being recorded. Because the hearing is public, participants and viewers have no reasonable expectation of privacy. By continuing to be in this meeting, you are consenting to being recorded. Additionally, prior to recognizing members for the questions or comments they have for witnesses, I will note for the record at this time that we will use the chat feature available in Microsoft Teams to allow members to signify that they wish to be recognized. In order to comply with the Sunshine Act, the chat feature must only be used for that purpose. Before we begin, I do want to also let everyone know that I will have to step away from the hearing for a moment or two, and that Councilman Heenan will be conducting the hearing in my absence. So I'm going to ask the clerk to please call the first panel or witnesses that we have to testify. And after she calls their names, Councilman Heenan, who is vice chair of this committee, will conduct the rest of the hearing. Thank you.
Hi, so our first panel will be Charles Johnson and Julian Sellers.
Okay. Would you?
Okay?
Good morning.
Yes, we can hear you. Good morning. Can we have you please, one of you state your name for the record and begin your testimony. But actually, before we do that, I do want to recognize Councilman O, who has an opening statement. Councilman?
Thank you very much, Chairwoman. I just wanted to inform, the public what this ordinance is about. The city of Philadelphia does not have jurisdiction over fireworks completely. That is a matter of state law, and our chairwoman, Councilwoman Bass, and other council members have introduced and passed a resolution urging the state to take action on these matters. However, our code does provide restrictions on the use of fireworks, but it does not specifically say that they cannot be used after 9 p.m. except for federal holidays. So while they cannot be purchased by someone who is under 18 years of age, and they can't be set off on private property without written permission or within 100 feet of a occupied structure, that can be challenging to identify and enforce. And I think it's a little confusing for people. We're just letting folks know after 9 p.m., don't do the fireworks. And other than federal holidays, but you still need to comply with the other requirements. I think all of us have received calls from people very disturbed, concerned, especially those with PTSD, pets, seniors, children, infants, that type of thing. And with that, thank you very much, Chairwoman.
Thank you very much, Councilman. And, it was a very interesting summer and fireworks season this year. And so we all thank you for this bill, any help that the city of Philadelphia can give to aid its citizens, so that we don't feel like we're all living in a war zone. We greatly thank you, Councilman. And so with that, I'm going to ask if Councilman Heenan is available, and we will hear from the first panel. So Mr. Sellers and Mr. Johnson, if you want to, again, state your names for the record, and one of you begin and proceed with your testimony. So why don't we start with Mr. Sellers?
How you doing?
Good morning.
Sellers, captain with the Philadelphia Fire Department's Fire Code Unit.
And I'm Deputy Chief Charles Johnson with the Philadelphia Fire Department's Fire Prevention Division. So good morning, Chairperson Bass and other members of the Committee on Public Health and Human Services. I'm here providing testimony regarding Bill number 200392, because this bill also would impact Fire Code. I'm being joined by Captain Julian Sellers from the Fire Code Unit. Thank you for allowing me to speak about the impact and dangers of consumer fireworks as you all discuss this bill. Every year in the United States, thousands of citizens will be either injured, killed, and or suffer long-term consequences due to firework-related incidents. These injuries and deaths stem from a variety of causes, all related to the misuse, malfunction, and or Federal Hazardous Substance Act's FHSA regulations violation. The banning of fireworks locally would have a positive impact on lowering these numbers and protecting citizens that we are tasked with protecting. In dealing with fireworks-related death and injury prevention, the Philadelphia Fire Department Fire Prevention Division utilizes a national approach developed by the National Fire Protection Association, or NFPA. We obtain national stats on both injuries and deaths, as well as the national prevention messaging associated with fireworks via the NFPA website. This information allows us to have a standardized approach to safety messaging to be communicated to the citizens of Philadelphia and beyond. The 2018 Fireworks Annual Report, which is the most recent, prepared by the U.S. Consumer Product Safety Commission, or the CPSC, yielded the following information. During the fiscal year 2018, CPSC's Office of Compliance and Field Operations continued to work closely with other federal agencies to conduct surveillance on imported fireworks and to enforce the provisions of the FHSA, Federal Hazardous Substance Act, and regulations under the FHSA. The compliance and field operations staff, in cooperation with U.S. Customs and Border Protection, CBP, continues to conduct surveillance on imported shipments of consumer fireworks. With assistance from CBP, CPSC staff selectively sampled and tested shipments of imported fireworks in fiscal year 2018 to determine compliance with the FHSA requirements. Approximately 67% of the selected and tested shipments were found to contain fireworks that were non-compliant. These volatile fireworks devices had an estimated import value of $523,000. In calendar year 2018, there were 5 reported non-occupational fireworks-related deaths. Emergency department treated injuries are estimated at $9,100 for calendar year 2018. From years 2003 to 2018, the range of annual injuries were 7,000 to 12,900. The parts of the body most often injured were hands, fingers, legs, eyes, head, face, and ears, and also arms. Burns were the most common injury to hands, fingers, and arms. A review of data from follow-up investigations showed that the typical causes of injuries were from misuse of fireworks, errant flight paths, tip-overs, early ignitions, and blowout. At the time of the investigation, which was conducted typically 1 or 2 months after the injury, most victims had recovered from their injuries. Not many, but just a small percentage of them interviewed reported that the effect of their injuries might be long-term. Fireworks-related deaths for the 2018 CPSC year has reported 5 non-occupational fireworks-related deaths that occurred during 2018. Including those 5 deaths described, CPSC staff has reports of 121 fireworks-related deaths between 2003 and 2018 for an average of 7.56 deaths per year. Long-term consequences of fire-related injuries, most victims, 60%, have experienced or expected complete recoveries with no long-term effects. 40% who have experienced injuries do suffer from long-term effects from these injuries. At this point, I want to turn it over to Captain Julian Sellers from the Fire Code Unit. Cap?
Yeah, thanks, boss. So the one thing I can touch on, and Councilman O spoke to it, the state has oversight on fireworks, but the restrictions in place do help to, or at least give some teeth to enforcement. The main one is consumer fireworks and the distances from occupied structures. You're not supposed to utilize any kind of consumer fireworks within 150 feet of an occupied structure. Also, under trees and power lines. And the third thing to mention is permissions are needed if you're going to use them on any public or private property. But when you add all of those things together with the distances and everything like that, it's a lot of restrictions in place already. The issue is you can't really, the enforcement is tough, as he spoke of earlier. Most people are using them after hours, and it sounds like gunfire sometimes. And a lot of citizens are frightened by the fireworks. When it comes to the fire code, we have more oversight over display fireworks. We do inspections. We conduct inspections at shows and games, and we get to actually see and supervise the usage of the display fireworks, but consumer fireworks we have no oversight over. So, based on the code, maybe more enforcement. Maybe there's a possibility to implement more enforcement strategies, but from what I can see, the code offers all the restrictions that we should be able to utilize to at least further this bill. And past that, I don't really have anything else to offer. If you have any questions, specific questions about the code, I'll be glad to answer those.
Well, thank you. This is Councilman Bobby Heenan. I'm going to thank you both, Deputy Chief and Captain. I do have a question, and this has been an ongoing issue, and it escalated this year, right, for a lot of reasons, with the city unrest, with COVID, with more people being at home. And, I think it's responsible that we're actually having this conversation. So I want to thank, the council members who sponsored this bill, along with the rest of our colleagues, because we hear it every day. My question to either of you would be, how closely do you work with L&I on the enforcement of these? Because, there is somewhat separation of a little bit of responsibility and authority on, I'm going to say, like, shutting down illegal operations where they're selling out of backyards or selling on corners. Who is going to enforce whether there's a written or oral lease on the corner of a gas station? So it's an ongoing issue, and it's not just with fireworks. I mean, you see it, during other holidays, with the sale of flyers or flowers and other shirts, not having business privilege stuff. So it feeds into a different sector of the underground economy. And I know we don't have enough L&I inspectors. I mean, we need a lot more inspectors to help, continue to keep our city safe. So long and short on that rant is, how closely do you work with L&I as calls come in and as you respond? Because your houses, all right, are in every neighborhood across the city.
So Councilman, I'll take this one. The fire code unit works very close with L&I. We usually, when there's an issue where they intend to, for lack of a better word, cease in operations, they will call us, and we provide basically the uniform. Our inspectors will go. We work hand in hand with cease operations on businesses, and when it comes. But as it relates to fireworks, we do work very closely with them, although we haven't had an opportunity to conduct any enforcement activities with them. But as it pertains to this particular bill, we did have meetings, and we kind of I guess we put our collective brains together to come up with what might make sense for Philadelphia as far as restrictions or the possibility of a ban. To answer your question, we do work very closely with L&I. They're undermanned, understaffed rather, and so are we. But we do what we need to do to try to get the job done.
And we appreciate your service. I want to thank you very much for your commitment. Chair recognizes Councilmember Brooks.
Good morning. My question is about enforcement. Like, how is the code currently enforced, and what will this bill specifically change in enforcement? Because I understand my nephew is petrified of all the noise over the summer. My neighbors are complaining too, but I'm not really sure what to do and how to enforce it. And what exactly will this bill change in the enforcement process?
So the enforcement arm of the fire code, unfortunately, rests with the Department of Licenses and Inspections. I I can't really say how it will be enforced. I guess what I can suggest, or not even make a suggestion, but I mean, I would imagine that there will have to be police integration into this, because most of the infractions happen after hours. And although L&I can be called out after hours, we have to stop it when it's happening. So, in my opinion, that it probably will involve multiple agencies, not just L&I, not just the fire department. And I guess it would need more beyond the code. You might need more teeth. So an outright ban probably goes, and this is in my opinion, it probably will serve the enforcement activities a little better, because at that stage, there are no fireworks allowed. You know what I mean? So it's easier to enforce. It will be easier to enforce, in my view.
Yes, Mr. Chairman, I can also answer that question as the sponsor of the bill.
As long as Councilmember Brooks is finished with her line of questioning.
Yes, when she is done.
Yes, thank you so much.
Okay. Chair recognizes Councilman O. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman. There are two sections in our code that deal with fireworks. I mean, the fire code portion specifically deals with fireworks. There's no other section that specifically deals with fireworks. However, the noise violations, which include things like construction, setting off demolitions, concerts and all that, the decimal issue is actually under the health department, the health section of the code. And so the bill adds to what already exists about basically public disturbance by noises, including aggressive noises or noises that alarm people, that also result in, unfortunately, reactive responses, such as when someone thinks there's explosions or gunfire or a fire hazard because of the noise. So this bill amends that section which currently exists. And that section, in addition to the fire code, that section's enforcement is by the Department of Public Health, the Police Department, and Department of Licenses and Inspections to enforce the chapter, the regulations, and other things. And usually when people call late at night, they're calling the police department, who will coordinate, if necessary, with the fire department, the health department, and L&I. Unfortunately, there are probably no people from the health department and L&I working at 2 o'clock in the morning. And to answer Councilmember Brooks's question, there's graduated fines that are in place. So in addition to the enforcements that exist, there are fines. The first fine is between $100 and $300 for the first offense. The second offense, this is all within a 1-year period. However, if a person does this 5 times in one day, those are 5 separate offenses. So the first offense is between $100 and $300 fine. The second offense is between $200 and $400 fine. The third offense is between $300 and $500 fine. And every offense after that is $500 to $700, which are pretty significant fines. And the person would have that like within a 12-month period. So that's how this would be enforced. Let me say, for example, or not for example, but I had an incident where, they were setting off fireworks and that was kind of common throughout the city. And the police responded, and I live right next to Cobbs Creek Park. And to my shock, about 100 young people came out of the park onto my block, and for the most part were relatively peaceful compared to what was going on. But yeah, they were shooting off bottle rockets. There were things like that. They were, I think, just gathered to have fun. And eventually, over the course of about 4 or 5 hours, they dispersed without any incident, by the way. That was the police, and it was very well handled. But yeah, people want to have enforcement, and I think this is something that will help. Probably not the common situation where you have 100 people gathered together, but more like what was typical, 2 or 3 or 5 people. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Mr. Chairman, can I have a follow-up? So I just wanted to be clear that enforcement does not equate to arrest, because I'm thinking about Councilmember O's scenario that he just pictured. So suppose someone in the crowd have built up these fines up to $400. In any way, will it lead up to young people getting arrested for fireworks?
In the code, so I don't want to answer for the deputy commissioner or the captain, but in the code, there's no arrests. These are civil violations. And I think the thing is, in their situation, while they didn't have written permission to set off fireworks in the park, they were not within 150 feet of an occupied structure, but we could all hear it and see it because they were shooting fireworks that exploded, pyrotechnics, very colorful, loud, that type of thing. But as our fire officials said, one of the big concerns is injury to themselves and to others. And I think about that little boy who did what a lot of little boys would do, I would have done, hang on to the firework as long as you can to show your friends that you've got the guts to do it. And unfortunately, he lost his hand. And it just, people just don't understand, like, these fireworks are really powerful, and I can't even understand what they're doing to them. Are they like aggregating them somehow? The explosions are like not any kind of firework that when I was a kid. But I'm sorry, Councilmember Brooks. I wanted to answer your question. I'm sorry. Thank you.
Did that answer your question, Councilmember Brooks?
Yeah, I just wanted to just hear clearly that it's not going to result in young people being arrested for fireworks. And I understand the danger behind children holding fireworks. I understand that. But my concern is the danger behind large sums of young Black men in the hood getting arrested for fireworks, even though my neighborhood is also blowing up with fireworks all night. The result should not be arrest for young people having a good time. That's my concern.
Okay. Well, thank you, Council Member. Are there any other members on this committee that wishes to have any follow-up questions or additional questions for Deputy Chief and the Captain? And I do not see none. Gentlemen, thank you for your service and thank you for testifying here today. Hopefully you can hang around in case any other questions arise. With that, Sabrina, would you please call our next panel?
Yeah, our next panel is Chris Spar and Pauline Rosenberg, but I understand Pauline dropped off. So I don't know if council support, if you could attempt to call her. But those are our two witnesses for this panel.
Okay, great. Thank you. We will start with Chris and hopefully we can get reconnected with Pauline. Chris, would you please state your name for the record and you may proceed with your testimony.
Sure. My name is Chris Spar. Can you all hear me okay?
Please leave your message for Pauline Rosenberg.
Hi, Chris. We can hear you.
Okay. Thank you. Good morning, Chairperson and other council members on the Committee on Public Health and Human Services, as well as my fellow witnesses. My name is Chris Spar. I'm the Executive Director of the Centennial Parkside Community Development Corporation. I'm here to provide testimony on Bill number 200392. This past summer, as all of you know, we experienced numerous episodes of trauma in our neighborhoods, starting with the coronavirus pandemic that has disproportionately impacted our Black and Brown communities, causing illness, joblessness, and hunger, and continuing with the murders of unarmed Black men and women at the hands of law enforcement, leading to uprisings that shook our city streets for weeks. Amongst all of the stress and turmoil, the residents of many Philly neighborhoods also experienced the endless noise of fireworks, night after night into the early morning. Oftentimes, it was hard to decipher the sounds of fireworks from the sounds of gunshots. As the executive director of the Centennial Parkside CDC in the East Parkside neighborhood of West Philadelphia, I fielded numerous complaints from residents complaining about the noise associated with fireworks throughout East Parkside. We have many people in the neighborhood who suffer from PTSD associated with the sounds of gunshots and other loud noises. We have terrified children and working people who can't sleep at night due to the noise. One resident wrote to me saying, quote, "These fireworks are really out of hand. It's every single night. We have elderly people, children, pets, people who work, and it's terrorizing us and causing trauma and anxiety." One particularly terrible incident occurred in the early morning hours of July 5th when two historic apartment buildings located at 4224 and 4226 Parkside Avenue were damaged by a fire suspected to be caused by fireworks shot off from either the roof of the buildings or from nearby Fairmount Park. This fire displaced at least 11 people from the two historic mansions on Parkside Avenue. These were primarily affordable housing units in those buildings. These buildings are still unable to be occupied, and all of the residents needed to find other places to live. So as you've heard from my testimony, fireworks that may seem fun and harmless most of the time have created a multitude of traumas in the East Parkside neighborhood. And on behalf of the residents of East Parkside, I want to thank Councilman O for introducing this bill, and I am in full support of bill number 200392 and its efforts to limit the use of consumer fireworks in Philadelphia. Thank you.
Well, thank you for your testimony, Chris. Does anybody on our committee have any questions for Chris at this moment? Have we been able to connect Pauline?
No, I don't think so. Council support attempted to call, and it went to voicemail.
Okay. Well, again, Chris, thank you for your testimony, and we will give a little bit more time for someone else, for Pauline, all right, to reconnect. This way she has the opportunity to have her voice be heard and her testimony be submitted on the record. And I'm sure her testimony has been submitted for the record and will be if it's not. Sabrina, our next panel, do we need a moment to connect via phone?
Yes, please. Thank you.
Okay, so I'm going to ask that we not go into recess, but we will take a brief pause as we try to connect the witnesses, from the public who can call in and submit their testimony.
Please leave your message for 302-897-3458.
And while we're connecting, again, I want to thank all the panels and the witnesses for your participation today. We do value your opinions. And, as stated, we're going to be inviting or we ask that all witnesses and panels to, not disconnect for this brief time before we go into our public meeting. All right. These proceedings will be on pause briefly while we try to connect multiple participants.
Councilman.
I'm sure we can hear the residents for their testimony while still trying to reconnect. Is that correct?
Yes, and it looks like we're actually on the phone with Mark Harris now, so he may be joining shortly.
Okay, wonderful. We'll just wait for your cue, and then we'll start with our first person to testify.
Thank you.
Good morning.
Good morning.
Yep, I got it.
Wonderful. My name is Councilman Heenan. I'm chairing this meeting on behalf of Councilmember Cindy Bass. You may state your name for the record and proceed with your testimony, please.
My name is Mark Harris from Cathedral Park. It's a little community in West Philadelphia, just below Parkside. And we've experienced, I get around to West Philadelphia generally, a lot of problems regarding fireworks. They're loud, they're noisy, make it hard for people to sleep at night. And of course, people set them off anytime they want to. But besides the nuisance factor, there's a public safety factor. There was a structure up on Parkside Avenue which actually got set on fire because of falling debris from one of these things that landed on the roof. And also, many of them sound like like gunshots. So there's a confusion factor. When one hears these noises, no one wants to, call them into the police if it's a gunshot. But you can't really tell many cases, which means, sometimes they may not get called in, or they may get called in as a gunshot when they're just really just fireworks, which are, much less dangerous, which wastes the police time. So it would really be best to, outlaw these things as much as possible. Just go back to the way it was, where very innocuous things like sparklers were permitted, but not actual fireworks.
Well, thank you for your testimony.
All right.
Sabrina, may you call our next witness, please?
Susan Siegel.
All right, I just unmuted my mic and I will turn on my camera as well.
Good morning, Susan. Please state your name for the record and you may proceed with your testimony.
Okay, my name is Susan Siegel, actually Susan Siegel Bonavuticola. I'm testifying in reference to Bill 200392. I live in the West Mount Airy section of Philadelphia, and there was, most of the summer, there were fireworks every single night as soon as it got dark. And as the previous gentleman stated, sometimes you didn't know whether they were gunshots or fireworks. I want to thank, by the way, our fire department and our police department. I really appreciate your service, and city council for taking this up as well, because we really have no place else to go. I know I have dogs that were, every time I'd walk outside, they pull me back in because they were terrified. My neighbor has a little girl who was terrified by the noise. And there were several others, as witnessed on next door communication online, where every day there was somebody that was scared, whether it's because they had PTSD, or just plain fear, or the inability to be able to go to sleep because there was so much noise. And if you were lucky enough to have a window air conditioner, you were able to drown out the sound, even though it might not have been hot enough for a window air conditioner. You turned them on anyway, because that was the only way to get some peace and quiet. So I appreciate what you're doing. I just don't know how you catch these people in the act of doing it so that they can maybe be fined and say, this is not worth it, I'm not going to do this. How would that happen unless one saw them?
That is a good question, and I believe Councilman O is in a better position to respond to that. All right, but most of the time, the calls, are submitted to either 311 or 911, and they respond as quickly as possible. All right, I mean,
I understand that, but like when I called, it sounded like it was right next to me practically, but I ran outside to see if I could find it. And it was close, but I don't know exactly where it was. So I would have had to get in my car and drive around to see if I could find people that were actually shooting off these fireworks so that I could report them and tell the police or the fire department where to find them. That I found was the problem. They were in close proximity to where I was living. It was really awful. I mean, I understand federal holidays and I understand when people get frustrated, and the gentleman that mentioned sparklers, there's nothing wrong with sparklers. I don't think you can start a fire with a sparkler. I don't know. But if you don't know what you're doing and you don't care who you bother, I think you should pay a fine of some sort. But how do you find those people?
We understand that is part of the challenge.
Yeah. So I'm hoping that this is some way you find a path. Because 2 nights ago, again, in my neighborhood in West Mount Airy, around 9:30, 9:45, there were several huge bangs. Now I know they were fireworks, and I know there are people, young people who have nothing to do. The frustration level is huge.
We share your frustration. I
know you do.
And I think, I know that as a result of this legislation, even though we are governed through state law, I think the enforcement agencies are, more in tune with each other and have been speaking collaboratively with how to address these moving forward as much as we possibly can.
Well, it certainly will be much appreciated. Just what you're doing right now is helpful, because it's saying that you hear us and you want to help us. I'm just frustrated as to how. Having worked in government myself, I know it can be very difficult. But I worked on the federal level, so I'm not quite sure how the city level works.
Mr. Chairman, maybe I could just make a brief comment in answer to that question.
Yeah, Councilman.
Thank you very, very much, Mr. Chairman. So yeah, enforcement is always challenging. I think the first problem that we encountered was we never had this type of activity with fireworks, not to my knowledge, not anything like this, 3, 4, 5 weeks in a row, night after night, 2 o'clock in the morning, 3 o'clock in the morning, and really loud. But one of the problems is there was nothing prohibiting. You had to get written permission if you were in a public space. But for example, does that include the park, or does that include a sidewalk, or does it include a vacant lot, wherever it is? So it was difficult because while there are restrictions, for example, the purchase of fireworks is you have to be over 18. But after you purchased it, the possession of it is not, you could be 12. Possession is not a violation. And then, you have to be like 150 feet away from a occupied structure, but 150 feet away, you can still hear them pretty loud. And these appear to be some type of aggregated firework, because the explosion is louder than any type of cherry bomb or whatever I've ever heard. The thing is that simply letting people know, I think a lot of people don't know that now you cannot do it after 9 o'clock except for federal holidays. So that's a violation. It comes with a hefty monetary fine. And again, unless people are just intentionally trying to harass people, which then falls into another category altogether. But if they're just setting off fireworks and they don't understand that it's prohibited, it gives the health department, L&I, and in this case the police, if it's 2 o'clock in the morning, or the fire department, ability to say, hey, listen, it's prohibited, so it is illegal, and it comes with a fine, and hopefully people will positively respond. For bad actors, that's always a problem. They are bad actors, but that goes beyond like an ordinance. It goes now we were talking about criminal violations and things like that.
Well, in that vein, one of my neighbors, when I was trying to walk my dog, came out and said he caught a guy with his trunk open, shooting them off in the middle of a street. He just pulled over and started shooting them off, and there are right across the street from residential homes. So how do you, you have to like chase after them and say, oh, there was a guy here, and then call the police and then hope they get there before the guy takes off because he knows someone has seen him. I'm just,
yes, but
how it would work.
Yeah, I think this is a first step in a trying to address that question through the cooperation of our agencies around the fact that now it's very clear and people are alerted and we will kind of deal with it from here. But this is what we can do. And enforcement is a matter of the administration. As a legislative body, we're passing a law, and certainly we're going to work with the administration about enforcement.
So when the legislation goes through, it's going to be provided to the stores that, including grocery stores, I think, that sell these fireworks. How will you?
Well, that then becomes a state matter because there is an effort by council members. As I said at the very beginning, Council Member Bass introduced a resolution co-sponsored by other council members, and I think passed unanimously by council, just urging the state. And I know state legislators are looking at, banning fireworks altogether from the city of Philadelphia, the sale of it. All right. Thank you very much, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you.
Thank you, Councilwoman. And Susan, I want to thank you for your testimony.
Thank you.
All right. Sabrina, could you read or call our next witness, please?
Scott Dubin.
Good morning. My name is Scott Dubin, and I'm here to speak about Council Bill number 200392. As a lifelong resident of, thank you. As a lifelong resident of Philadelphia, I was absolutely blown away, no pun intended, by the higher than usual number of explosions that were in the night sky this year. I've lived in Philadelphia for 28 years, varying parts of the city, and as we all know, this year was ungodly. The streets surrounding my house on any given evening would be littered with fireworks debris. Many restless nights were had for my partner and I, not even talking about my dog who, he was scared. He was hiding under the nightstand every night. If I were at a later point in my life and had a small child in the house, I don't know if we would have made it through the summer in my neighborhood. It was that bad. Individuals would come over to the Sion Recreation Center behind my house and light up fireworks from the athletic field, the hockey rink, and even the playground, around or after midnight, every night. On several times, the athletic fields were set on fire by faulty pyrotechnics and by people who thought they were doing the Wawa Welcome America parade, on the athletic field. When I would call 911, and asked for someone to come out and take a look, they said, they were busy, which I get it. But at what point do quality of life issues qualify as important? When the police would come by, it would be hours after the offenders had already left. The damage was already done to the neighborhood and to the residents. When confronting the individuals, there'd be threats of violence, or less commonly, they would actually have a conversation and say, well, I'm not breaking any rules, let alone the fact they would be trespassing in a park after dark, under trees, near houses, lighting off fireworks. With the passage of this bill, that statement would be false because they would be breaking the rules. And it would provide an avenue for the city to stop these events from happening and provide peace and comfort to me, my family, my neighbors, and the city of Philadelphia. There are so many great reasons to live in the city, but quality of life issues like this severely outweigh all the positives I could possibly list. I like a good fireworks show, but not at the expense of myself or anyone else's health or sanity. Thank you, Councilmember O, for sponsoring this bill, and thank you to the committee for your time.
Well, thank you for your testimony. Sabrina, would you read or call our next witness, please?
I believe Pauline Rosenberg's on the line. Pauline, if you could unmute or press *6.
Good morning, Pauline. If you're able to join us, when that happens, could you state your name for the record so we know you were there, and you may proceed with your testimony. Okay, Sabrina, let's move to our last witness on panel 3, and we'll give Pauline another opportunity to join us.
That will be Joe Carson. He might have to be called in.
We'll wait a brief moment for Joe. Any luck with Pauline? As we wait for the last two, unless there are others, I just want to, again, I want to thank Councilman O and the members of this committee and council at large, for, addressing these issues. And for the record, we understand everybody's frustration as we share them ourselves, all right, because we all live in the city of Philadelphia, all right, that we are preempted by state law. And when we are preempted by state law, no matter what it is, we try to find ways locally, all right, to help address the quality of life and help address the public safety concerns in any way possible. And this bill does start to do that. And it may take a little bit to change behavior, all right, but it is the beginning to change behavior when we are restricted from an entire prohibition of fireworks in the city of Philadelphia because of the state law preemption. So I want to commend council for, trying to change behavior with some of the local provisions that we're able to do that we're not preempted. Any luck with witnesses, Sabrina?
Pauline is on the line. She just has to unmute. Can you please unmute or press *6, Pauline? Hi, Pauline. We can't hear you.
Pauline, if I may, why don't we try reconnecting after this session? And, we would love for you to submit written testimony to which you were going to speak on. It seems like we're having some difficulties, connecting, but we still do want to provide you an opportunity to do so. So Sabrina, if you would be able to try to make that happen on behalf of the committee, we would appreciate it. That being said, are there any other questions or comments from members of this committee? I don't see any. There being no further questions from the members of the committee and no other witnesses that are able to connect or that are in the queue right now, I will ask if there's anyone else present in this hearing whose name we have failed to call, all right, that wishes to offer testimony on any of the bill, all right, or amendment that are submitted here today. Hearing none, I want to thank you all. I want to thank all the panelists and the witnesses for their participation here today. And again, as we value your opinions, I now invite all the panels and witnesses to please disconnect from the meeting before we go into our disconnect from the hearing before we go into our public meeting. And we will take a brief pause for the proceedings as multiple participants have the opportunity to leave the hearing. Wonderful. This concludes the public hearing of the committee. We will now go into our public meeting to consider the actions to be taken on the bill that is heard in front of the committee today. Sabrina, would you please call the roll to take attendance? Members that are in attendance will please indicate that you are present when your name is called. Also, please say brief words when responding so that your image can appear to be displayed on our screen as you speak. Sabrina?
Councilmember David O.
Present, and thank you very much, everyone, for participating in this hearing.
Councilmember Helen Gim.
Present.
Councilmember Derek Green.
I am present.
Aye.
Councilmember Isaiah Thomas.
Present.
Councilmember Kendra Brooks.
Present.
Councilmember Cindy Bass. And Councilmember Bobby Heenan.
I am present. With that, the chair recognizes Councilman O for a motion for the amendment to bill number 200392.
Thank you very much, Acting Chair. I offer an amendment to bill number 200392. A copy of the amendment has been circulated to all members of the committee. I move that the amendment to bill number 200392 be approved.
Can I get a second?
Second.
Question.
Thank you. Note for the record that the motion has been seconded by Councilmember Green. It has been moved and properly seconded that the amendment to bill number 200392 be approved. All those in favor of a motion signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Aye. Opposed? The ayes have it. And the amendment to bill number 200392 has been approved. The chair again recognizes Councilmember David O. On a motion, the bill number 200392 as amended.
Thank you very much. I move that bill number 200392 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit first reading of this bill at our next session of council.
Can I get a second?
Second.
The chair notes for the record that Councilmember Green seconds the motion. It has been moved and properly seconded that bill number 200392 as amended be reported from this committee with a favorable recommendation, and further move that the rules of council be suspended to permit the first reading of this bill at our next session of council. All those in favor will signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? The ayes have it. Motion carries. And this will conclude the business for the committee of, my apology. So that motion has been properly moved and seconded, and it will be read at our next council session with the rule suspension. All right, and this will now conclude the business before the Committee of Public Health and Human Services. I want to thank you all and thank all those who have participated in our panels and the general public for calling in. Thank you and have a great day.